I'm very excited to be here at our forum event and to talk about TikTok, climate change, and what's happening. I'm joined by my colleague, Mike Silverman. Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Do you want to say hi to the audience and who you are?
Yeah, I'm Mike Silverman. I'm a research director here at Zero100, and I'm really excited to be here.
I think we're going to have one of your friends in a bit as well.
Yes, Nicole Loher. I'm so excited she's here.
I'm so excited as well. So, Mike, we're here to talk about TikTok, and just yesterday, you were helping me with some slides and reminding me that there's no space between Tik and Talk, and that sort of explains how much I know about social media. So why are we talking social media and supply chain?
Because social media is already talking about supply chain. If you look at hashtags manufacturing, hashtags supply chain on TikTok, they already have millions and billions of views. So people are talking about it. And I think we really need to view it as a tool, and it's a powerful tool that can be used for a lot of good to improve our work and also has a lot of risks. So I think we just need to make sure we're not ignoring it, getting smart on it, and coming up with a plan.
Yeah, I agree. Just pops into my head of me and you getting ready for this event. Lots of speakers. You have a session coming up. We were talking about titling your session.
Yes.
Let's bring people inside the genius of Mike and Matt trying to figure out how to title talking about TikTok and supply chain.
Yeah, well, I actually think the title itself, Ollie came up with, of TikTok supply chain.
That Ollie guy.
Yeah, I know. Smart CEO of ours.
Embarrassing for us in research.
I know, right? That he really thought of that first. Yeah. But we ran with it. Kevin fleshed it out in a Signal newsletter piece, and it really caught some attention. And that's like why we've developed it and invested in the idea and research to support it. But titling matters. And we love the idea of TikTok supply chain. I think there's something that both sounds very now and also sounds a little risky, which could be good or bad. On one hand, it's a bit of a lightning rod. I think it's exciting for folks. On the other hand, we don't want it to be dismissed by folks who are reading this, of folks in the C-suite who don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. There's talks about bans in the EU. President Biden is talking about it as well here in the US. If it does get banned, this social media communication work is not going to go away. Yep. So I think whether we call it that today or we call it something else or rebrand it, the concept still will have legs.
The good news is that we've got Insta supply chain in the backup. Yes. And then what we actually landed on for your session title with Bullwhip. So why don't you maybe reflect on why did we choose Bullwhip? What is that meant to represent?
Yeah, so the Bullwhip effect is well known within supply chains, where a small effect in the supply chain can have a ripple effect in a very, Indiana Jones symbol.
It's a really good whoop.
Thank you. I really didn't even practice that, but I'm glad it worked out. Yeah, I didn't pull a Chandler whoop-ah or anything like that. So
Friends, fans.
God, we're nerds. Or just old.
Or both.
So Bullwhipped was actually your idea. And I am giving you credit, but it was really about the supply side and the demand side. Normally, ideally, it's a balance, but so much has been invested in that demand side, in how we sell things, how we use things. If you think about social media, if you think about digital marketing, if you think about, and this is looking at the past 2 decades, and then everything around e-commerce and omni-channel, to even how we talk about products with 5-star reviews and YouTube reviews. Everything about this has been digitized and super powered, and that expands the loop to where it's not balanced and putting extra pressure on the supply chain. So I think that's where we're thinking of really what's behind this Bullwhipped, is that forces are actually coming from this side that we have to react to, and that's additional pressure. And with things like social media, we're even expanding past the traditional impact. It's not clothing seasons happening 4 times a year, because drops are happening every week. Trends are happening faster and happening louder. So again, TikTok isn't changing. There are always trends and fashion and things that determine our product strategies and what we think people are going to buy and what they're interested in. It's happening amplified right now and so much faster. And that's the stuff that when we're actually moving physical goods or creating physical goods, responding to that is a lot of work and investment to do that. And that's where things are kind of out of whack today.
Totally. We're going to bring in Nicole in a second, but I want to talk about the data, because you recently just ran a really cool research study and have some fresh data. Before I do, I have to reflect. You mentioned Chandler, right? So I just saw recently a TikTok where a mom interviews her Gen Z son. She's asking him different questions about a fax machine and everything else. And she asks him who Rachel Green is, and he doesn't know. Oh. He didn't know who Rachel Karen Green was. Oh, I was very disappointed. Okay, so back, social data. What did we learn from the study we just ran?
I think if they don't know Rachel Green, they're definitely not going to know what a fax machine was, it sounds like. So there's kind of 2 pieces of the data stuff I want to share. One is a little bit quantifying the power of TikTok, and then a little bit of our Zero100 research. Yeah. That's cool. We all know it's out there and know its symbol, but it's pretty amazing. It's now the second most used app on the planet, second only to Facebook. Data shows people are using the app on average around the globe 23.5 hours every month.
Yeah, like we just talked to Scott Galloway on his Prof G podcast, and he was talking about the parent company. And it's one of his big predictions. If you're not familiar as a listener, like go check out the size and power of TikTok. It's crazy.
Yeah, so it's really powerful. People open the app on average 17 times a day, scrolling through these 20 to 30 second videos. And it's different than sitting back and watching a TV show because you're constantly engaging with it. So it's really impactful, really sticky, which is why people spend so much time on it, where it has value and danger, I think, in that way. So we really want to think about what is happening with social messaging and where supply chains fit there. So we know sustainability is trending, and it's trending on social media, but something all of our partners and community members deeply care about and are actively working to figure out. But the gap is really wondering, when will they care about the work that we're doing? So we put out a survey to about 700 consumers, and we created 18 different sustainability claims that supply chains can deliver either now or in the near future, and really wanted to look and see how they understand these, and then are they willing to pay more for them? We also did this by generation too, to really see what groups are doing stuff differently. And across the generations, Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, and boomers, all around like 80–85% said they care about the sustainability of their products. But when we asked them when they're willing to pay more for them, that's where we start to see everything shift. The younger generations willing to pay a lot more. Gen Z responded to 71% of our claims that they would be willing to pay more for, and millennials about 64%, while for Gen X and boomers, that was like in the 50s range. So again, we start to see marked differences of where they're responding to those claims, which is exciting.
Yeah, this study was fascinating, like really blew my mind. It also like gave me hope for the future. Consumers understand a lot more about supply chain than I perhaps knew.
I agree. I think they understand more and they're interested in more. And there's some cool things. And there's really like two buckets of where the stuff sorted out that we're really excited about. One is what we did is we had these claims. We asked them how they understand them, what they're willing to pay more for, how much they're willing to pay more for. And then we also ranked those based on their carbon impact, which was our assessment of really how they can help reduce the carbon footprint. And for the ones that have the power to reduce the carbon footprint and consumers care about, that's things like products lasting longer, products being able to be repaired. There's things that just make sense as a consumer that you value, but then it ends up not having to buy more things or things ending up in a landfill. I initially was thinking of a lot of clothing work, especially given Nicole's work in fashion and our conversations that we've been having. But we just heard Ana Corrales from Google talking about their Pixel phones and talking about how that is critical in how they are designing and investing in these phones. People used to have their phones for about a year. They're now keeping their smartphones for 2 to 3 years. So they have to think differently of how they build them and how they are able to be repaired and supported through that time too. So that applies for a variety of stuff. And those are great messages that consumers care about it. They're going to pay for it. It's like 2 thumbs up. Let's do that. On the other side, we have elements that are high carbon impact, but customers don't value as much.
Right.
So these are things that they don't understand as much and don't think they have value. So something like low carbon intensity materials. This is something way back in sourcing that we know has a ton of value, but consumers don't understand it. So why are they going to pay more for it? There's an opportunity to translate this to consumers. And we're hearing that people want to learn more. They want to hear about the hard stuff, and they want to hear where we're making progress within supply chain. So I think that's really exciting things that we have to find ways to bring in that consumers value that as well too.
Yeah, you know, actually, I remember growing up in supply chain when people asked, like, what is that? And you would be sitting, for me at least, in an airport bar. And I would point out something and be like, well, let me just tell you the story about how this bottle of vodka got here and like the glass blowing process and where it comes from. And after they woke up from my very boring speech about the vodka, they would move on. But it's like the conversation has completely changed. Like people care. My family asks, so we can all dork out. I think that's a good jumping off point for us dorks to stop talking. And let's bring in our cool friend, Nicole. Climate communicator, researcher, and professor at NYU. I now have life goals. Try to do that myself. So Mike, Nicole World wants to know, how'd you meet each other?
Now this does sound like we're on the rom-com press junket or something like that.
So happy you asked. We actually worked together on a pretty big client pitch at the beginning of the pandemic. We actually had so much fun on it that we have been collaborators since. And we've even been teaching at FIT together, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
That's cool. Actually, Nicole, one time Mike told me he had a class at FIT. I misheard it and thought he was teaching a high intensity training class and that he'd become a trainer. And then I came to learn it was all about fashion.
It's amazing.
So what brings you here to the event? What brings you into the supply chain community, Nicole?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I love what Zero100 is doing. I think it's phenomenal. It takes a lot of the research and gives C-suite actions that they can enforce with their own teams. For me, it's not C-suite, but it's a little bit different in that I'm pretty passionate about elevating climate communications and sustainability communications for executives so they can better empower their teams.
And how'd you find your way into the climate conversation?
I actually started in luxury fashion and beauty and saw this gap. Or I guess it was a gap then, but now it's what everyone's talking about, where consumers have this growing interest to understand brands, what they're actually doing to help better their supply chain and also like better the environment that we all live in. The state of climate is pretty bleak right now. The IPCC released their AR6, which was a devastating playbook for how can we get out of the climate crisis that we're in right now, and gave very actionable insights and takeaways for not just corporations, but businesses and regulators alike. All of this combined with my communications background kind of led me into this space of how do we take all of that and actually create action? And with my students at hand, they're Gen Z and they're the ones that care the most about this. So
talk to me about that. I'd love to hear how Gen Z is different than the rest.
Oh, wow. They're very different. They're terrifying. They're also great. They're changing not just demand, but brand communications all around. How they're shopping is much different than ever before. So we see them using social media more than Google to research products. They're more likely to be activists than any other generation before that. And I'm not talking out in the street activists. I'm talking about how they spend their money more than ever. They're willing to put their money behind products and brands that they actually believe in. And if they don't believe in you or they feel like they're being greenwashed, they're going to call you out.
Very interesting. And it's like, in supply chain, it's sort of the risk of greenwashing versus the advantage of going after revenue. We find ourselves in a new spot.
McKinsey and Nielsen just came out with a report talking about really looking for this interest in ESG products and seeing if it was actually translating to product sales. We have people say they care, say they're going to pay more, and the question is, do they actually do it? And they looked at a bunch of products in the CPG space and found higher revenue for products with ESG claims versus without. They found higher brand loyalty. So again, all good things. And this also applies down even to generic goods being put out by retailers. So it's not even only at the high end. These claims are really helping and moving stuff and showing revenue. And it applies to messaging too, which is really cool, where the more granular the message is, the more specific can you say that it is carbon zero or it's vegan versus just saying a sustainable product or an environmentally friendly product. That increases revenue for a product. Stacking up multiple claims, 1, 2, 3, 4 claims together had a higher impact than less claims. So lots of interesting stuff there.
From a climate perspective, what do you find makes good communication versus bad communication?
Yeah, so I'll start on the good side of things. Good is transparency. It's being really honest about where you are in your journey. And it's using the right platforms to reach the targets the way that they want to be reached. The thing that brands typically get wrong or companies normally get wrong is that they feel that communications is very much like a broadcast, but it's actually a dialogue. And that's the main point that a lot of these brands are missing. And there is this aspect of it too where brands are scared. No one wants to be the first to say, like, I don't know. But that's what Gen Z wants to hear. They want to hear that authenticity. They want to hear the realness of that. Something that needs to change in that brand communications dialogue.
I am a new fanboy of communications. I grew up in supply chain. How the career ended up at Amazon and their global corporate comms PR organization. And when I arrived, I was like, supply chain's here. Let me help out. And I got schooled hard and how important comms is. And so it's interesting is we as well just had some data released from Zero100. We asked chief supply chain officers, what's the top 3 skills that you think shapes the way forward? Number 1 on our list is communications. And so it's an interesting space where supply chain has this opportunity basically to make it real, like you're saying, create the transparency. And so, Mike, what's the opportunity when you start thinking about connecting comms, sustainability, and digitization, like from a social, Insta, TikTok? What are some of the risks, challenges? Like, how do you look at that space?
Yeah, and we're not telling chief supply chain officers to get on TikTok and start doing dances or anything like that.
If they want
but
to?
Honestly, maybe we should tell them to do that. After a few margaritas, maybe we could convince them. But really what we're asking them to do is to use this as a tool. And we're showing that this is really a powerful tool. And there's a bunch of different ways that they can use it. Number one is use the data that you're seeing there. Really understand the feedback you're getting from consumers about the products that you're putting out there. Can you understand where interest is happening and move inventory closer there? There's some really cool opportunities to think about how you respond and do things smarter. Second, I really want to encourage folks to rethink some of manufacturing to respond to that as well. Where can we be more nimble? Where can we have shorter supply chains? Are there things that we can make more flexible or modular to respond to a scent or a color that's trending so we can get customers what they want? And therefore, we eliminate the waste or the need to discount things or destroy products that are unsold. And finally, we do want them to flex their communication skills. We think the way to do this is with their comms partners. And it's really about, one, being an advocate for honest and precise reporting on what they're doing in sustainability. And like Nicole said, I think a little bit of vulnerability there and transparency is really critical and something that's scary, but where things need to go. And then also to let your comms folks know the successes within your supply chain and also where you're on the road there, because that's also something consumers are really hungry for that aren't just the things that are broadcast.
Mike, you just hosted a roundtable with our board of directors yesterday on this topic of TikTok supply chain. What's your top takeaway from that conversation?
I have two. One is really a vision of organization. We talk a lot about the loop, about the supply side and the demand side as kind of separate. And they spoke about, to get these things done, you need people who are empowered to do things across the entire loop. And I think that's a really exciting thing that we're doing here, and bringing in someone like Nicole here is like bringing people to collaborate across this work. The second comes down to money and cost to invest to do these things. And there's things that you can do in your manufacturing to increase flexibility, but stuff you have to invest in way further upstream. So where are you defending that and making sure that you have common goals that bring that value to life? And then also, is that value translating to other organizations outside your supply chain too? So it's about like opportunity costs lost if you're not communicating this stuff well, if you're not providing this flexibility, responding to social data to be really fast and respond to virality of products.
That's cool. You mentioned the loop. I'm going to do my best to describe what that actually looks like. It's a really important point for this conversation. So we talk about the supply side of a value chain as source, make, move, and then the connection into sell, use, and regenerate. And so there's this linkage in the loop itself, which looks like an infinity symbol that goes from regenerate into the sourcing process. Supply chain is right there in the name. It was a chain and it like had an end. And so like when I grew up in supply chain, I just handed a box off and then I was like, bye, have fun. Like I never had to worry about what happened after that. So I think it's a great point. Like social sits right at that center and that center point of conversation. And with that in mind, I'd love to know from you, Nicole, what brand do you admire most in the way that they do storytelling? What kind of stories are out there being told? What could people learn from somebody that you admire out there?
I think Nike is doing a really great job. They know that they don't have it perfect, but they know who their consumer is and they know their brand mission more than anything. They recently had Zero Waste campaign come out, which was really this idea of reinventing their shoes to help tell the story of how they were getting to net zero. It really does take consumers on this journey that they didn't even know that they needed to know about to really understand the product. But through that, they also understand the brand ethos and why they exist and how they're going to exist in this new era. We talk a lot about social and influencer and it's fun, but like the reality is that the future of climate is really bleak. And for brands to be able to withstand that, they're going to have to adapt. And it's not just adapting to Gen Z, it's adapting to how the landscape is shifting. And, you know, I really admire Nike for being so transparent in that and willing to take risks.
In a typical supply chain, when we go like to the super practical, last year we had the Estee Lauder team here. And Jane Lauder mentioned the use of QR codes and so just using that for storytelling. And you could see all the light bulbs of the operations people think like, oh, I could actually tell them about my zero waste to landfill just by having that there on a QR code. So I think there's all sorts of ways to connect this together. And I think that's perhaps where I want to wrap is first of all, thanking Nicole and Mike for bringing a perspective in here. It's great to sit on a couch with people who are coming at supply chain from outside of supply chain. So really appreciate hearing your perspectives about that. And Mike, I look forward to taking one of your HIIT classes sometime in the future.
Nicole is actually the triathlete here, so she's the one who can whoop our asses and give us a better workout, I think.
Let's all do it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Research presented in this episode is forthcoming. Subscribe to our newsletter for alerts when new reports are released. This episode of Radical Reinvention was produced by Brian Egan, Diane Hope, Nick Heineman, Duda Rodriguez, and me, Victoria Marin. Mike Silverman and Nicole Loher contributed research findings and insights to the episode, and Ko Takasugi Chernovin is our editor and sound engineer and also composed our theme music. To find out more about 0100 and to check out our content library, go to zero100.com. If you're interested in joining our community of contributors, send us a note at hello@zero100.com.